This coming series of videos, I will talk about the journey of individuation. For the purpose of the series of videos, I've also made a myth regarding this process. This to put it into a short story which tells about the things that happen within such a journey, before delving deeper into the journey itself, and to talk about what I've learned when looking at my own journey so far. But I would like to start it off by telling a mythological story. The myth of the divine twins. Little Reynard walks to the fireplace towards his grandfather, old Manu, who is sleeping in the chair. Carl, the cat, is lying on the sheepskin in front of the fireplace, purring. Reynard jumps up and down with excitement. Grandpa Manu, can you please tell me another story? Half asleep, old Manu looks at little Reynard, and with a slight smile, he says, I have one more story that I can tell you. This story is about the time that the goddess Sol hid in the underworld. It all started one day when the two young twin brothers, Logos and Eros, on their fox mounts, were hunting in the forest. Logos is a blonde-haired young god adept with his bow and arrow. Eros, on the other hand, is an expert tracker, as he is also the god of the wild animals. Eros has big antlers and deer ears on his head, and a more hairy, muscular body, where Logos is more skinny type, but very swift of mind. Sol, the sun goddess, was as usual that day sitting on the celestial throne above the world tree, overseeing the tree itself and all of the offshoots that Quercus, protector of the world tree, and Hebe, goddess of rain and clouds, would nurture to life at the birth of new life on this mortal plane we call home. She saw Hebe glide through the air on her cloud shoes to pour the water from her amphora, and then her gaze went towards the distraught-looking Logos, riding his fox, with Eros' fox being empty. Logos rode on his fox through the sky, creating the famous fox's fire that lit up the sky, and went first to his father, Quercus, and then to his mother, Hebe. Then Logos rode up to the celestial throne, where Sol was sitting. What is the matter? Sol asked Logos, with a worrying look on her face. Why so distraught? Has something befallen my beloved Eros? Logos then told Sol the news that while him and his brother were out hunting, Eros was gone out in front to track a great stag. Logos had grown impatient, went out ahead, and then in a split second saw two big antlers moving in the distance. With his trusty golden bow that never missed a single shot, he aimed at what was moving in the distance, and he hit his target. But to his shock, Logos found out it was not the stag that he had killed, but his own brother, Eros. On Eros' death, he was transformed into a willow tree, and his body had disappeared. Logos asked Sol to come and meet with the rest of the family at the world tree, as they would talk about what they could do. Sol, after hearing this, broke out in tears in sudden shock on the celestial throne. It is said that on hearing the news, that the sun gave no warmth that day. At dawn, the family was waiting at the bottom of the world tree, lamenting the demise of their son and brother. To their surprise, Sol did not show up. Logos and his cousin Elata, the moon goddess, joined in their lament, and soon ventured upward to the celestial throne to sit there to rule over the night. But Elata had not yet gone up to the throne yet, and the world became dark. In a hurry, both Logos and Elata went upward to the throne and found it empty. Logos, on his fox mount, went through the sky searching for Sol, but she was nowhere to be found. Unbeknownst to them, Sol, on hearing about the death of her husband Eros, had gone in tears to hide in the underworld. Clueless as to where Sol had disappeared to, Quercus pleaded for his brother, the god of boundaries and magic, to find out what had happened to Sol. The ground started to shake, and the soil started to crack. A mist of smoke appeared out of the ground, and his brother formed out of this vapor of smoke. "You have summoned me, brother," he replied. He continued to explain that Sol had disappeared to the underworld in the deepest realms of that domain. He further said that only both Logos and Eros together could go through the challenges as they would when they would escort Sol through the underworld, as they had done every night. Quercus, Hebe and Logos then replied in chorus, "Our dearest Eros has died in a terrible hunting accident. What are we to do? Without Sol's return, the world would be plunged into eternal night." Basileus told them that Logos had to go to Eros' body in the Cave of Forgetfulness, where the mighty wolf Hati sends guard to keep anyone from entering the underworld. There, in the underworld, he would find his brother Eros, at the bottom of the giant agate crystal, guarded by the stone giant Talos. Hebe pleaded Logos not to go alone on this dangerous journey, but with determination he went on his fox mount and rode off towards the entrance of the underworld. There, at the gate to the underworld, stood Hati. As he would have done with his brother Eros, Logos places the offering to Hati on the forest floor, and waits patiently for Hati to eat the offering of raw meat, and for him to be able to continue his journey. Logos kisses his bronze amulet and walks deeper into the Cave of Forgetfulness till he reaches the stone gate of hell. To the mortal eye, it looks just like a stone doorway carved into the wall, but for those who know, they can pass right through into the realm of the dead. On his fox mount, Logos rushes to the river of darkness, and the fox swiftly jumps from one stone in the river to the other. Logos, clenched to the back of his fox, rides like the wind to the cave of Talos. When Logos arrived at the cave, he snuck in and immediately saw that he was too late. Talos, being a stone giant with 4 faces that wields a massive splitting maul, had cut up Eros. In the center of the cave is a giant agate crystal that holds the sword Veritas. The sword Veritas is the only thing that can harm Talos, as Logos' uncle Basileus had told him once before. Feverishly, Talos is walking back and forth around the agate crystal. Logos grabs a small rock from the floor and throws it to the back of the cave. Disturbed by the noise, mighty Talos grabs his massive splitting maul tight and drags it behind him, creating a gap in the floor. With his bow and arrow, Logos breaks the agate crystal, which immediately alerts the giant back to the entrance to the cave. Now, in the center of the cave, there is no more agate crystal, but Logos is waiting there, with the sword Veritas in his hand, directly pointed at the tall giant. With a loud grunt, Talos swings his splitting maul, but Logos blocks it with his sword. When Talos tries to lift his weapon, it shatters. Logos strikes with his sword of truth at the hands of the stone giant, and the giant's hands fall off, while the rest of the giant falls into tiny pieces. Now finally, with Talos defeated, Logos runs to his brother Eros and falls to his knees. From his right eye, a tear falls onto the body of his deceased brother. This single tear setting the entire body of Eros alight till it flows away as a dust towards the agate crystal, where from the shattered pieces Eros is reborn as a young child. At the same time, some of this dust is swirling around Logos, transforming him too into a young child, and they find themselves in what seems to be an endless land filled with fog. Now they are both young children. They huddle close together, Logos barely able to hold his sword or bow. "Oh, my brother," Logos said, "what am I glad to see you." Eros looks at Logos, perplexed. What is going on? Logos then explains to Eros what had all happened. Eros sits down in shock and looks at himself, but couldn't get a word in because he was interrupted by a loud flapping sound. Both Eros and Logos look up, and from the distance, something big seems to be heading towards them from the sky. This massive shadow turns out to be a giant owl. This giant owl, Strix, was said to disembowel an infant or child and feed on its blood. Both Logos and Eros in panic run away. Logos hides behind a tree, his sword too heavy for him to hold, while Eros grabs vines from the large swamp bowls of Nyx to use them. "What are you doing?" yells Logos to Eros. Eros just replies, "Get her right out of here. Come and help me with this." Logos tries to sneak towards Eros, but the giant owl spots him and tries to snap at him with its beak. Eros throws the lasso around the owl that tries to get Logos and pulls it as hard as he can. Angry, the bird tries to now attack Eros, and Logos sees the other vine lasso on the ground and throws it too around the big owl's neck. Together, they hold onto the lassos till Strix tires and falls onto the ground. They both go on top of the bird and use the lasso to help them ride out of the chasm of torment on top of Strix and search for Sol in the underworld. While riding on top of the owl, Eros spots Sol. Both Logos and Eros go down to the mourning fields, and Eros then again spots Sol. They land on Strix, but the bird then quickly takes off and flies away, with both Eros and Logos being adults again. Sol walks backwards towards a small bog and tells Eros to come to her. Eros follows her in desperation, while Logos, holding a sword, Veritas again, sees nothing and tries to pull Eros away from the bog. What Eros doesn't know is that he's dealing with a sylphid. This is an elusive being of air that haunts the underworld and can take many shapes, tricking people towards a body of water to drown them in the waters of despair. With Eros walking closer and closer to the bog, the sylphid shifts her shape and takes the shape of a lamia, half snake, half woman, and tries to drag Eros into the bog of despair to drown him, while she tries to suck out his life breath. Logos now sees her and cuts her in half, while she vanishes as a form of fog, with Eros' life force restored. Now walking around in this forest in the underworld, both Logos and Eros are worried about what is there. Logos holding his sword, and Eros holding his brother's bow and arrow in hand. They see in the distance, at the center of the underworld, a massive crystal. They walk closer and closer towards the crystal till they come to a forest path, and on that path a deer crosses it. Eros falls to his knees in shock, and Logos brushes towards him, tears falling over Eros' cheeks. Both Logos and Eros hug each other and lay down their weapons. A big wind swirls around them, and they are now in front of the massive crystal, completely surrounded by giant roots. In it is Sol. Both of them walk towards the crystal that she is in and go on one knee and put their hand on the crystal. Energy erupts out of the crystal upwards. Meanwhile, from the crown of the world tree erupts a beam of light that connects to the North Star. The energy of the crystal is tearing apart the shape of both Eros and Logos. They are quickly becoming liquid, till they, in the form of two distinct red and blue energies, are sucked into the crystal. Sol is catapulted to the North Star. There, Sol awakens on her throne, and two orbs, red and blue, float around her. Below her, still a beam of light illuminating the sky. Both the orbs fly into the beam of light, creating a massive spark, and everything goes dark, till another purple beam comes out of the world tree with a massive rupturing noise. And both a bearded Logos and Eros step out of this purple beam. The world around them comes to a short standstill, soul embraces Eros again, with tears in her eyes, and thanks Logos for all he had done and endured. Now reborn, both Logos and Eros no longer compete against another through hunting. They instead help their father watering the trees that offshoot from the world tree. With that being the end of the story, Old Man Manu lifts up sleepy Renard and carries him to bed. He there tucks him in and walks back to the fireplace. He there grabs an old-looking sword and pokes the coals before going back into his seat